and let us all do we can to build a better future.
Folks, it's not looking good. There is some rumbling happening. So what am I talking about? What's exactly going on? Well, for those of you who've been seeing this on social media, I hate being the person saying, "Oh yeah, we've been saying this for a while that this might happen, or this is a sign of things to come." But the Dow tumbles 700 points into bear market territory. S&P 500 heads for a new 2022 closing low. So what's going on? So stocks tumbled on Friday to close out a brutal week for financial markets as surging interest rates and foreign currency turmoil heightened fears of a global recession. Now, it wasn't too long ago, just a few weeks ago, where the Biden-Harris administration, Democratic lawmakers, and everyone else was saying, oh, everything's fine, the recession's going down, but yet the reports are still coming in of gas prices either somewhat lowering, but then quickly going back up, price of food going up. People are struggling just to make ends meet. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell more than 700 points to fall below 30,000 to a new low for the year. A 30 stock index has fell 20% from its high, known as the bear market territory on Wall Street. Let's again look at these people. These are the people who control our politics. Again, it was last trading at 756 points, lower to 2.5%. The S&P 500 fell to 2.7% and headed for new territory, headed for a new 2022 closing low, while the NASDAQ composite slid to 2.8%. The market has been transitioning clearly and quickly from worries over inflation to concerns over the aggressive Federal Reserve campaign, said Quincy Cosby of LPL Financial. You see bond yields rising to levels we haven't seen in years. It's changing the mindset to how does the Fed get to price stability without something breaking. The British pound hit a fresh more than 3-decade low against the US dollar after a new UK economic plan that included a slew of tax cuts rattled markets that are fearing inflation above all right now. Major European markets lost 2% on the day. This is a global market mess that the market is trying to sort out. And as we all know, let's face it, the same people led us to the 2008 collapse. They were never held accountable under the Bush administration, under the Obama administration, because remember, Obama told us that we have to look forward. And remember, folks, just before, I just want to pull this out here real quick, because again, we have to remember who's leading us. Who is leading us right now? We have a clown that's leading us. We have somebody who's clearly not in command. What am I talking about? I'm talking about this guy. This man. He doesn't know where he's at.
Mr. President, thank you. At the end of such a momentous event, the word thank you seems kind of inadequate, but for all the millions whose lives will be saved, for the communities where life will be transformed, thank you. So thank you, President Biden, for your outstanding...
As someone who's taken care of 3 senior citizens, and also include my grandpa before, I know from that body language, especially with seeing my Uncle Bernie, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother, that's the body language of someone who clearly doesn't have their mental facilities all put together. So before I pull up the article, Lauren, I want to get your comments on this, this economic collapse that we've been talking about, or the signs of one, of this recession that's been cast aside by corporate media. And of course, let's talk about our also confident dear leader. So Lauren, take it away.
Well, I feel like it does kind of feel like we're in a Wilson situation again, where when like his wife was actually in charge for a long time, but it was like really like, behind the scenes, like she's forging his signature and like propping him up for photo ops. Like it feels like that is sort of happening again, only right now it's Kamala who's actually in charge, but we're still giving him the credit for everything, which might, she's probably fine with that because things aren't going so great. But like, I'm just tired, I think, of, all of these things that have happened in the past 10 years, because no one got anything more than a slap on the wrist for their behavior then. So now they just kept doing the same exact thing, and it's just plunging us into something even worse than, or potentially worse than happened in 2008 and then again in 2014. So just, I just want consequences. I would really love for some of these people to have to actually suffer some consequences to them personally because it affects everybody else personally. But we're not getting that, and they are not receiving those consequences. And so they just feel inclined to just do the same exact stuff over and over and over again, and screw everybody on the bottom, which is everybody who is not in that top 1%.
You know what, Lauren, you're preaching to the choir, but unfortunately you are asking too much for consequences because, again, we've legalized bribery. The same people who control our corporate media also control our politicians, and our politicians know who greases their wheels. And it's unfortunately the people in Wall Street, banks, hedge fund managers, private equity firms, these jagoffs who are screwing us over. And look, let's face it, it's been said before by people who've called out the failure of accountability of 2008 for the economic recession that we entered into, that no, history is going to not only repeat itself, we're going to see a rhyme. Words are going to start sounding the same again. And dare I say it, this recession will be a depression. Look, in 2020, we had an opportunity to stop this. I mean, again, the country chose not to protect its people or bail out its people or do a debt jubilee. The country decided to keep things the same, keep people locked in, but oh no, pay your debts, pay your bills, but no, you can't go to work because of the pandemic. So in other words, everyone, and it's going to be the little people that are going to be screwed over. Remember, folks, it wasn't the politicians or the banks that had to pay for the consequence of 2008. It was you. You, your friends, your family members, your community had to pay for it. Who do you think they're going to make pay for it again? It's going to be you. And let me tell you something. If you vote Democrat or Republican, you are a very special person if you vote Democrat or Republican. If you vote Republican or Democrat, because, as a kid, I used to believe in Santa Claus. I used to believe in the Tooth Fairy, all that fun little stuff, right? But eventually you grow up. It's really sad seeing people of the boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, and even Gen Z that somehow can look me straight in the eye and say, yeah, I like my Democratic or Republican lawmaker. That's why me and my family vote for them all the time. These politicians are going to bail out Wall Street. Look, these same politicians who've been in power for decades are going to let this happen again. They're not going to help you. So if you believe in that, you're a very special person. You're a very good puppet. I will not vote Democrat or Republican. I will vote third party. And if there isn't a third party candidate, I will leave the spot blank because that's the right thing to do. And as always,
I think it might have been McKinley. Sorry. I was like, I think McKinley was the one, not Wilson. I want to make sure I get my history facts right.
Or are you talking about like
because I don't want to hear it in the comments. I got it wrong. Well, I think it was McKinley. Either way,
you're
talking
about
power behind the
presidency.
Yeah,
well, there's also been talks of even when Ronnie Boy Reagan, like, let's face it, he had early onset dementia too, where he had a lot of handlers surrounding him. I mean, I'll never forget that infamous speech where he's making a speech and then this guy comes up to him and says, "Hey, wrap this speech up, let's go." And I'm thinking, if I was the president of the United States and somebody whispered that in my ear, I'm like, mofo, I'm the president. Don't you ever talk to me like that. But anyways, like I said, I'll go mad with power. See how crazy I go with the board. But folks, this is an opening of just how bad things are going to get. Look, the stocks are going to keep on falling further and further. Americans are going to be hurting. And the thing is, this is opening up the door for now corporations to hurt working class citizens even more. So what do I mean by this? Shout out to Case Study QB who found this video. Again, look, if the corporations can start treating people like crap again, especially as we enter into this recession, they're going to. What do I mean by that? Well, let's pull this up here. Lauren, under the Biden-Harris administration, employee performance reviews making a comeback post-pandemic. Who has the upper hand right now? It is the workers or the bosses. It's still the workers. It will be the bosses soon. So in other words, folks, they're going to find a way to screw you over no matter what. But remember, they're telling you that you're lazy. You have to work harder and vote harder.
Oh, yeah. The quiet quitting thing.
Oh, go ahead. Continue. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no. Just like it's in that vein, like everyone getting all bent out of shape about quiet quitting, which is really just, doing the job you're paid to do and not beyond that, because that wasn't what was in your contract. But everyone's like, oh, it's quiet quitting because you're not going above and beyond and bowing over backwards for the corporation that you work for. But which is ridiculous, because literally quiet quitting is just doing your job. The end, no more. Like, but and like it's throwing that in to the mix is the same thing that you're just talking about now.
Agreed. So let's hear this nightmare. And again, shout out to Case Study QB. He's wrongly being censored by Twitter. Support his Twitter page.
Really hated by bosses and employees alike. And now the dreaded workplace performance review went on hiatus, of course, during the pandemic. It's making a comeback. Let's discuss with Jessica Kriegel, the chief scientist of workplace culture at Culture Partners. Why now? Why are they resurrecting this now? And what do they hope to get out of the process?
I mean, everyone is afraid right now. We've got so much to be worried about. We've got the pandemic, there's war happening, inflation.
Look, notice they're saying the word fear, Lauren. It's like, here's the thing. You know, as none of these politicians are perfect, but at least when FDR spoke of we have nothing to fear but fear itself. I mean, at least we had a leader or a politician. And again, no politician's perfect, but at least there was this example of, okay, we're in a depression. Let's lead ourselves out of it. But everyone's so afraid. Corporate media wants to get people be afraid. Hide underneath your bed. Be afraid. Be afraid. It's so sickening. Yeah. Where is the courage? But we got senile senior citizens running us, Lauren.
No, well, these are the people who, you know, touted the duck. Like they were like learning the duck and cover thing in the 50s. You know, that's who's in charge of us right now. Like, is the people who believed that that would work and who were afraid of the Russians then. And now they're still afraid of them now. And like that's who's in charge. It's not the people who were listening to FDR as adults, you know, and believed that. It's their kids who grew up under McCarthy and like just so much fear the whole time, just permeating everything. Everyone was terrified for 25 years that there was going to be a nuclear war. So like that's who's in charge right now. And they're letting that fear still now permeate everything.
Session. Think about your last segment. Mass layoffs are coming. And I think many executives are saying it's time to figure out who is the weakest link. How are we going to identify those people, get them out of the organization, and performance reviews is their best idea. It's terribly misguided because what we don't want to do is give employees the experience of we don't give you ongoing feedback. And now suddenly we're going to have this conversation in which we tell you whether you're in or you're out. That is not going to create a culture that people want to work in. It's in fact going to incentivize people to look elsewhere. And not only is all of this happening in terms of recession and inflation and fear of layoffs, but there's also a staffing shortage. So people are feeling pulled in all directions, and it's just a nightmare for everyone involved.
I mean, you make a really good point that if you are a boss, for example, and you are giving a performance review and there's any surprises in that review, then the boss has not done his or her job, right? You should always be talking to workers about what they can do better. But how do you assess workers in this climate where some people are working remotely, some people are working, 4-day weeks if they can? So you haven't seen some people in 2 years.
Yeah.
Under the Biden-Harris administration, they want you to be afraid always. Work, work, work till you die, folks.
You're absolutely right. The instinct to want to communicate with employees is a good one, but the way that we're doing it with this once a year, maybe twice a year bomb drop conversations about performance is not going to get us there. We need to be having ongoing feedback conversations. It's like when you put a plane on autopilot, we're making little adjustments. Every time we speak with our employees, we can be doing a feedback conversation, which creates a really positive experience, actually. We have seen studies that show that companies can reduce turnover by 15% if they're giving their employees regular, ongoing feedback experiences. And that's all the time. It's not scheduling a meeting and saying, okay, it's time to tell you whether you're in or out. It's about every day throughout a project, once a project's over, with your peers, with your manager, constantly talking about what's working, what's not, and how we can adjust.
So do you think the performance review coming back is a function of where we are in COVID and the pandemic?
Now, folks, again, I'm just going to fast forward through all of this because this is corporate BS, and I do not want to put you guys through this abuse. So I'm just going to fast forward just a little bit to where they say, hey, who has the power again, or who's going to have the power?
Who has the upper hand right now? Is it workers or the bosses?
It's still the workers. It will be the bosses soon. But, I talk to hundreds of CEOs all year, and they're afraid of how they can attract talent. And so I think that the people who get laid off, they're going to be just fine.
Ha! Lauren, your thoughts while I pull up the next video, because again, this is we're entering into a clown show. That's where so go ahead, take it away, Lauren.
I mean, it just kind of feels like with these performance reviews and that it's like a report card, you know, like when you're a kid and you're in school and you get every quarter you get the report card, but then like, you know, if you're not getting the interim also, you're just suddenly surprised by that grade at the end of the semester. It doesn't give you any chances to try and fix it. I've never worked in a place that had an employee like review because I've never had an office job before. I've always worked in places where, you know, we have meetings every so often, or like we get just a blast email saying, hey, look, this is what we need to do as a group to make things better. And like, I feel like that works because one, no one's getting called out specifically and you don't feel attacked. You're like, oh, okay, this is something we can do as a group to get better. And that's pretty like, and that's easy to do, I would think. Like, you know, you have a group of 100 workers and, you know, they're all in little segments and sections and they all have their own special jobs. You can just shoot a blast email to whichever section and be like, hey, look, this is what we need to do in order to improve. If you've got any ideas, you know, this is what the group email's for, right? And then like everyone can kind of be involved in the situation. Everyone feels like they're part of the team. No one is going to be being that person in the group project who's dragging things down. And that way you do get to keep your talent and you don't have to worry about it. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm still a proponent of if you pay your workers what they are worth, then they'll stick around.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
I know that that's unpopular in the corporate world because they want to pay everybody the least amount they possibly can and then wonder where their employees go.
Exactly. But I also want to pull this up here too. I'll only be able to play just a few short minutes of it. But remember, folks, this recession that we're entering into, it's, again, notice how the lady said, hey, those people who are laid off, they'll be fine. Really? You know, my unemployment story, I was unemployed for about 10 months. It was the worst 10 months of my life. 2013 was the worst year of my life. I felt terrible. I felt disgusted with myself. I was trying to find work and it was a terrible time for me. But comparing 2013 to what we're going through right now, it's like night and day. There are families and regular people out there, working class people who even don't have families, who are struggling and wondering what tomorrow holds. So yeah, lady, I dare you to say that to a person on the street right now. But also, folks, again, while this is happening under the Biden-Harris administration, this is also happening too. Yes, this is from Fox News. But
before we get into that really quick, just to piggyback off what you just said just there about her comment that the people who are going to be laid off are probably going to be fine. Just right now, I don't know if you've seen this, but I've seen it over and over and over again. People being like, I've applied to 40 jobs this week and I've heard back from one of them. Like it's not that people aren't looking, it's not that they're not trying, people are not getting responses. And so like for someone to say, oh yeah, they'll be fine, it's like, but they're not. The people are trying to find jobs, they're looking, they're actively searching for jobs, and then they're not receiving any kind of information, or the jobs that they're receiving you know, answers for are not something that they actually want, or like not like they're looking for. It's like, I don't need another sales job. You know, it's like, that's not what I applied for. Because that's happened to me applying for jobs. I apply for a job and then it's just it's a sales gig again. And I'm like, but that's not what the job application suggested this job was. Like, it's not that. And so yeah, you're right. To have her say, oh yeah, they'll be fine. I think that's wildly naive.
It's actually pretty asinine on her part. But hold on, folks, because remember, we also got a crisis with food.
Pumping nearly $180 million into international food projects and climate and immigration issues abroad. But at the same time, President Biden has ignored requests to sit down with our farmers, our own farmers who are literally begging for help. John Boyd Jr. is the president of the National Black Farmers Association. Thanks for getting up early with us this morning, John. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
No problem. So you've asked Biden to sit down and talk to you, but it's not happening. So how do you foresee this? What do you foresee happening to American farmers, especially when you see all of this money going overseas to help them, but not helping us here at home?
I have two messages for the president. One, that God is still in charge and he's sitting high and looking low. And he has to honor his word. Man doesn't keep his word. My daddy said it. isn't a good man of character. So the president hasn't kept his word. And we got money for everybody. We got money for farmers in Ukraine, $250 million for aid there for infrastructure to get them equipment. And the dealer called yesterday and said, Mr. Boyd, your combine is in such bad shape that we can't even fix it. So they're sending it back to me. So we got money to help those farmers, but we don't have money to help American farmers here in the worst situation we've been in with facing the food crisis. We're facing high costs of inflation, high costs of imports, and all of these things, diesel fuel, fertilizer. And we have farmers facing farm foreclosure right now. And I've been pleading with the administrations to stop these farm foreclosures.
Okay, so there's a little bit more to the video. I urge everyone to check it out. But look, he goes into detail what we've talked about, what's happening to a lot of American farmers. A lot of these American farmers are struggling. Not only are they facing foreclosure, not only are they facing the fact that they don't have the resources needed to fix their equipment, we've also covered how there's fracking impacting their drinking water or their water source that they use to feed their cattle, feed their crops, all that other good stuff. And to remind you, again, these farmers feed America. And the Biden-Harris administration is turning a blind eye to them. And also you got billionaires buying farmland. We have money for war, but we don't have money for the people. And now we are entering into maybe the beginning steps of a recession. Dare I say it, a depression. It's not looking good. And the people are being abandoned. This is a powder keg that is going to explode violently. And when people have nothing left to lose, they will react irrational in a completely irrational situation. So the thing is, don't expect people to be civil when they've lost everything, when their families are struggling or either that suffering because they can't take care of their said family members. Lauren, your thoughts? I'm going to give you the final word.
I feel like you summed it up perfectly, though. Like, it's despicable that we can't help our own farmers, and our farmers feed our people. And if we're in this, with food prices as high as they are right now, and just not, it doesn't seem like it's getting better, and things are just disappearing off the shelves of we're not getting stuff into the stores anyway. And then the things we are getting are more expensive than ever. And we're sending money off to who knows where, all sorts of different places, which, yeah, awesome. I'm all for it. Let's send aid. But can we please tend to our own backyard? I've said that before on the show. We need to look at our own home before we can really effectively help anybody else. And
Right.
We're not doing that. It's all about optics. And right now we're ignoring everything that's happening internally, which is not going to help us stay strong in the future.
Agreed. And I'm going to give you the final word on that, folks. It's not going to get easy.